Exposure is a much more realistic version of war, told from the perspective of Wilfred Owen, who actually was in the trenches and of course died in the trenches just 2 weeks before the end of the war. The verb exposure at the beginning, or the title exposure at the beginning, reminds us that they are exposed in a number of ways, through the weather and through being kind of like abandoned by the people in charge. The first half of exposure focuses on how that exposure comes across through the weather. We get in our first line here the use of the sibilants, the merciless ice-east winds that knive us, to essentially imitate the kind of fear of the wind as well as the wind itself. As it comes in, and it's describing as coming to knife them and being merciless. It's like it is an assassin coming up to murder each individual one. Meanwhile, the effect of it is that their brains ache, and this carries on in the rest of the stanza, the idea that basically the confusion they suffer, they find it difficult to focus on the reality of what's going on. But nothing happens. The line at the end that is constantly repeated, that always reminds us that as far as war goes, this is pointless. Now he then begins a succession of images to do with the war, as though the war is a soldier attacking them. They hear the mad gust tugging on the wire like twitching agonies of men among its brambles, the idea that the wind is coming through no man's land across the barbed wire coming at them. We have the word mad going to it, as though it's attacking on there, as though essentially the thing that it's out of control, it's to be feared. It was a madman coming at them. We have the image of dawn coming, massing in the east, her melancholy army and attacking. Something that normally brings comfort, the dawn, actually bringing danger, bringing an attack on them, and coming from the east with its melancholiness, that word that means a kind of intense sadness. It's almost like it's attacking them with sadness. And then we move on to the snow. Further down here, the flowing flakes that flop, pause and renew, where again the F alliteration is another imitation, but it's much softer, yet the point is made that it is more deadly. Okay? More deadly almost than the wind. It comes up, and just beneath this, with fingering stealth, it comes feeling for our faces, as though it's almost like a stealth attack coming for it, grabbing your faces from behind. A real sense that the danger comes from nature, and the only imagery that they can use is basically war imagery. Meanwhile, there are images, again with use of alliteration, of the war itself, the flickering gunnery rumbles of the enemy there, but it always is, as it says here, far off, like the dull rumour of some other war. Okay? So the enemy are there, but not as deadly. What we then move on to is a bit of a daydreaming coming in. The snow makes them drowse, and they end up going back into images of brighter, nicer times. The trouble is, when they see images of nature improving, that just makes them think that they are dying. The only way they can interpret nature as a good thing. And so it moves on to the other side, to the final stanzas here, in which, in their daydreams, they begin to go home. They go home and they begin to see the crusted dark red jewels of the fires, the things that seem great, but all that they've got in there is the mice and the crickets rejoicing. All they've got is that the doors are closed on them. Even in their imaginations, the doors are closed on them of their own homes. So, we move on beneath to the conclusion of this. If when even they go home, they're not able to imagine being allowed into their homes, they end up believing that God's invincible spring is going. This is the reason they were born. And finally, we end up with the image of the weather coming back. The frost shriveling many hands and puckering foreheads crisp, chilling people off, making their eyes ice. The frost essentially dehumanizing them. But the very end reminds us. The final image is one of pointlessness.